Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Joining us to talk about the Texas, everything happening Texas political-wise, our good friend, editor of QuorumReport.com. It's Scott Braddock. Scott, good morning. How are you doing today?
Doing well. We've got rain forecast in Austin for the rest of the week. I know y'all could use more of it up in Lubbock. They kept saying it was going to, but I guess it's holding off. It's a great point that you make about, we have about a month until early voting for the general election. And before this month is over, the mail-in votes, the absentee votes, will be, sort of in process, at least for those that are allowed. We've had this court battle back and forth about exactly who's allowed to even ask for a mail ballot, but there are people who can get them regardless. So that's underway. So it's just a matter of weeks, really, before this whole thing's over. In fact, go ahead and call it, Chad, and we'll all go home.
Thank you very much.
I know. I'll take the rest of the year off. See you in 2021, folks, when maybe things are a little bit brighter out there.
It just, it seems like, this thing is still so far away, but it's really not. And I mean, that's why you did have for example, the Trump campaign. They were saying, can we get another debate in before the election begins? Because people will start casting ballots while there are debates happening, which is, it's crazy, but that's just how it works. I guess I want to start with an election that happens even sooner than that. And that is this special election in SD 30, Scott. Tell us what's going on there.
6 candidates have lined up to try to succeed outgoing Senator Pat Fallon, who, as you know, we've covered here on KFYO, is headed to Congress to take the seat. Well, officially that hasn't happened just yet, but it's pretty, just a formality in that district. It's a very Republican district. He's going to be a member of Congress to succeed John Ratcliffe, who is the Director of National Intelligence for President Trump. And so you have some names people have heard before. Representative Drew Springer, who is, of course, from Munster, Texas, tiny little town there in SD 30. And the person who has been heard of a little more lately, Shelley Luther, as I guess I coined the term, rebel salon owner from the Dallas area, who was the one who defied Governor Abbott, over the shutdown orders for the coronavirus response. And then you have 4 other people who are not as well known. One of them ran for legislative office previously against Chairman Jeff Leach over in Collin County, Democrat, who is running there. And the mayor of Denton also in the mix. And that's an interesting entry into the race. This guy, Chris Watts, is the mayor. I believe he's term limited out as mayor. And so he decided to go ahead and throw his hat in the ring, see if he can make a run for the Texas Senate. To represent this huge district, as your listeners know, Chad, that's one of those that's sort of a giant district, not unlike the district that's represented by Charles Perry or Kel Seliger. We have Texas Senate districts that are as big as some states. Seliger's district, by the way, is as big as Indiana geographically.
Wow.
This one goes from, and the shape of this one, Chad, it goes from Collin County and Denton County, which is, of course, just north of Dallas-Fort Worth, the suburbs of DFW. It goes all the way up to Wichita Falls and then down to Stephenville, Erath County. And so Drew Springer has been really, I'll give him his due, he's really been working the district for about a year. But when it was first said that, and it was first reported that John Ratcliffe was going to be appointed Director of National Intelligence, you remember, Chad, that didn't work out at first.
Right.
That he actually had to be renominated. It turned into almost a year-long process for him to be confirmed as DNI. But that did not slow Springer down, and it didn't slow down Pat Fallon either, who was ready to go to Congress. They both started a domino effect, just cascading effect. Fallon goes, and starts campaigning for Congress. Springer starts campaigning for this Senate seat. And the makeup of the district, it's really a battle between rural and suburban Texas, and which is going to win out. The reason I say that the Denton mayor is such an interesting candidate in this race is because that's the population center of the district. That's where the people are. And so you have this salon owner who's from that area, the Denton mayor is from that area, and then you have Springer, who's been just running around, putting all these miles on his truck, going to every little place that if 2 Republicans were having coffee in one of the small towns in that district, I'm sure Springer showed up with a sign, and some bumper stickers and said, vote for me for Texas Senate. So it's a scramble, and in the early voting for that one, Chad, that starts next week. That's on Monday. on the 14th is when that gets going, and the actual election day, we're less than 3 weeks away. It's on September 29th.
What are we hearing about this race as far as favorite, non-favorite? Listeners know Drew Springer's name really well out here. He's appeared on this show numerous times. There are listeners in his district that we've got. Luther, I think if people out here may have remembered her and then forgotten her name, and then maybe they remember her name once again. Those are obviously the two big names, at least out here that we know. Obviously, the Denton mayor has some name ID. But what's the feeling on this race?
It feels right now like a race between Springer and Luther just because they're the best known of the bunch. When you have a scramble like this of 6 candidates, it's hard to see how it doesn't go to a runoff, and it is. Some people will ask this question, is it winner take all on the 29th? It's not. There would be a runoff if none of the candidates is able to get over 50%. And the Denton mayor being in there probably does help it go to a runoff by splitting up some of that Denton County vote. Yeah. I was looking back previously, Chad, that this is a sort of comparable race. I was trying to get some perspective on this. In 2014, when Glenn Hager became comptroller, when he won in November, you may remember he was a state senator right before that. Right after the general election in November in 2014, Hager resigned his Senate seat because he wasn't done with that term yet. He was 2 years into it, so he basically had a free shot at statewide office. So somebody had to be elected to fill out the rest of his term. That ended up being Senator Lois Colcourse from Brenham. And I say it's sort of similar because even though the district's a little bit smaller, it's still a big district. It goes from Brenham, Texas, down to Victoria, closer to the coast, and then over to the Katy suburb of, the Houston suburb of Katy. And it's about two-thirds rural, one-third suburban. And Colcourse, who's from the rural area, she won without a runoff with 55%. And that was a special election that was held in December. So it was also kind of a quick, run at one of these Senate seats. For that reason, historically, I do think that Springer probably has the leg up. I would sort of handicap it as it's his to lose. But if you've seen the television ads that have started running, and they're starting to run over the last few days and more are coming soon, Luther has a very compelling story.
Yes.
And one that I think, here's the thing about Shelley Luther. And we said this the other day on the Texas Take podcast, which people should subscribe to on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. But look, she is maybe not as well known a name, like you said. Maybe the name ID isn't there. If you said, who's Shelley Luther, most people might not know that name. If somebody said, who's the Dallas salon owner who defied the governor, people might know who that is, right?
Yes.
And her television ads, in 30 seconds, it tells the story and reminds people about it pretty well. If there are real resources put into running that, both on the air and digitally, I think that she's definitely in this race. And I would say, if you could do a poll where you ask people, about the candidates, and one of the choices was Dallas salon owner, that person might be at 25%, and that person would actually be ahead of, quote unquote, Shelley Luther if that was also a choice on the poll.
Well, and I think right now, listen, anyone who is a fighter of the governor, sorry to the governor's people right now, but anyone who is opposed to the governor and is a fighter against this governor on the Republican side, guess what? I think that's liked, and I think that's embraced right now.
It is, and you don't see a governor have their numbers collapse the way that Governor Abbott did in the last couple of months, where he had been a general approval rating, more like 66, 67%, something like that, and his coronavirus response was polling under 40%. His general approval had gone below 50. As you said, apologies to the governor's folks and everything, and he's responding to a crisis that, and this is a reality, none of these other politicians who are bitching about it have to do the work that he's doing, right? And so he's taking the heat from left and right for making these decisions. One of the former advisors to Governor Perry, Ray Sullivan, just the other day, or actually was quoted this morning in the Houston Chronicle saying that anytime you had folks on both your left and right mad at you, that probably meant policy-wise you were in a pretty decent place. As you know, the governor's issue, I think really with a lot of folks, is that he did a 180 on a number of things, and that's why he's, especially on the masks and some of the other restrictions. The governor has teased out that he's going to, talk about some more lifting of restrictions soon. But this is an interesting test, as you allude to, as far as whether an anti-Republican governor message can propel a Republican candidate to victory. We'll find out.
Yeah, I would say strange times we live in, but it's 2020. It's normal.
Yes.
It's just normal in 2020. Hey,
again, just fold it all up. I'll see you in 2021.
What about this PAC, this Democrat PAC group? They've announced that they're going to drop $6.2 million across 18 Texas House seats.
Yes, sir. Interesting. This group is called Forward Majority. It's a super PAC, actually, and they say they're going to spend $6.2 million spread across 18 Texas House races. If you do the quick math on that, it's about $340,000 per race, although that would be, if they all got an equal amount, Chad. I don't imagine that's what's going to happen. Some of these could get as much as about $1 million. They didn't go into that level of detail in their announcement, and we won't see on the campaign finance reports until later how much of the how much each individual candidate got. But even if that sounds like a lot of money, believe me, Republicans are ready with resources as well. There are those who are Republican strategists, consultants, etc., who have said that, for those seats that they're defending, and let's talk about where they are. Obviously, it's not in deep red rural Texas like where you are or East Texas. These are the suburbs, right? We're talking about Collin County, Denton County, Fort Bend County, Williamson County, down in Hayes County and places like that, where Republicans want to defeat some Democrats. And some of the Democrats that they want to take on are those who won their seats in 2018 in districts that were carried by President Trump. So when we talk about areas that are swing areas, those would be the definition, right? I mean, they voted for Republicans in 16, they voted for Democrats in 18. And I think in this case, the Democrats are getting some real resources, but we've been waiting on that, Chad. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about whether real resources would be coming. And this is the first sign of that. I'd say it's sort of symptoms of resources is what we're seeing now for Democrats. They'll probably need a lot more to get there, but Democrats only need to win a net of 9 seats to take the majority in the Texas House. We've said it over and over again. But Republicans are not going to let the narrative be that the GOP is only on defense. They have announced that there are certain Democratic candidates in the Texas House who they are targeting, at least 6 of them, in some of those suburban communities that I mentioned, where they want to take some of those seats back and make it not a 9-seat question, but make it more of a 12-seat question or a 15-seat question. If they can rock the Democrats back on their heels in some of those places, then they can maybe fight them to a draw, and Republicans would carry the day and continue to have the majority in the House come January.
Scott, we got to wrap it up. We're a little bit late going to break. Tell folks what you're working on over at quorumreport.com.
Well, we've got it all for you. We're keeping track of your state board of education. We're keeping track of what's happening with the Texas budget. We're keeping track of the special election that we talked about. We'll get into exactly what's happening with the campaign finances on that and so much more at quorumreport.com. You can sign up for a subscription there. Just click the banner at the top. It says subscriptions, and we'll get you all signed up. Thanks, Chad.
All right, thank you. That's Scott Braddock, editor, quorumreport.com. We'll visit with him again on Monday. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.